Welcome back to Missing. I am Tim here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic today, Tim. Thanks so much for asking. I hope all the listeners out there are doing great as well. But if they're not doing well, Tim, they will be after listening to our guest today. She comes to this conversation with so much background, so much knowledge in her field that it is, I think we even said during the conversation that it is a bit intimidating when we have a guest on that has such a prolific background, again, in her field. But Tim, how are you today?
I'm doing great over here. Thanks for asking. And yeah, I'm really excited to introduce this conversation and to finally get to speak with former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer. And she is quite a powerhouse with the interviews that she does on mainstream media shows, but also just her Twitter page is something to behold, Lance. And I know Twitter is kind of a sort of a weird place, especially now. But I do love following Jennifer on Twitter because she talks a lot about the cases that we speak about and that are in the news. And in this conversation, Lance, that was recorded a couple of weeks ago, we do speak a little bit about potential arsonists when speaking about the Los Angeles wildfires. We also speak about Luigi Mangione. We get into Brian Kohberger and the Idaho 4 cases a little bit, as well as Karen Reed. So we really do sort of travel all over the crime sphere in this conversation with Jennifer.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful thing about her is that she has these great takes, and you might not agree with her takes, or you might agree with her takes, but when you follow her on Twitter or any social media and you're engaging with her, she is very open to having the discussion, and you'll find that out in this conversation. You don't really have to agree with everything everyone says, and I love that about her and what she does on her social media, that she doesn't just preach to her own echo chamber, which I think is super cool, and I can't wait for people to listen to this. If they haven't heard of Jennifer Coffindaffer, well, great. I'm so humbled that we're able to introduce her to them for the first time.
Absolutely. And folks can follow Jennifer on Twitter at Coffindaffer FBI. She also has a new podcast called Break the Case with Jennifer Coffindaffer. And you can check that out on your favorite podcatcher. That's really interesting to listen to as well. It's kind of an extension of what she does on social media. But she also has a YouTube, Lance. She's also hosts her show, Break the Case with Jennifer Coffindaffer, on YouTube, so you can check her out there as well. There are links in the show notes to all of these destinations.
So go follow Jennifer Coffindaffer, and while you're following her, if you're not following us, please do so at Missing CSM, and we are going to break real quick for commercial and be right back with Jennifer Coffindaffer.
Welcome to the podcast, Jennifer Coffindaffer. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
I always feel more comfortable when I lead off a conversation by telling somebody that I'm intimidated during this conversation. You're a powerhouse. You have so many amazing perspectives and you communicate them so well. And just like looking into what you've been up to recently, I don't even know where to start. So it's exciting, it's exhilarating. But thank you so much for being here. And can you just let the audience know I've built you up to this level? Can you let the audience know who you are and why you're on the show?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for that quite kind introduction. Hopefully I don't let anybody down here. Yes, I served 25 years in the FBI, 28 years in federal law enforcement. My main areas of investigation occurred in organized crime, violent crime, and gang investigations, also public corruption. And I had different posts, Houston, Dallas, the Virgin Islands. Somebody had to take that job. And then also at headquarters at the Weapons of Mass Destruction in the nuclear counterproliferation arena. that was really a cool job because nobody else does it. And then I was very fortunate to be on the FBI director's personal protection detail. I served on the Houston, Dallas, and San Juan SWAT team and was a firearms instructor from 1994 to present.
That's it?
That's it.
Very impressive. So you spent a lot of time with the FBI, and now you post a lot on Twitter about a lot of these cases. And what I like about it is I never know which way your posts are going to go, which I appreciate. As far as like your sort of your take on it. I guess, what is your strategy with posting about cases?
Well, Tim, that's interesting you asked. First of all, I never thought I would be on the social media or even mainstream media, certainly. That was not part of my write-up. I'm currently an expert witness. That's my full-time job, if you will. And I kind of happenstanced into the Gabby Petito case, fellow FBI agent who worked for CBS, or sorry, ABC as a contributor for years. They were looking to have him report on the Gabby Petito case. He was otherwise occupied, and he gave me a call and asked me if I would talk to the producers. And I said, Gomer, I am on this side of the camera. I like to work the cases. I'm really not much about talking about them. In the FBI, you're not allowed to talk. You don't want to get the Red Shoe Award, which was a little award that you got for sticking your foot in your mouth, meaning you're not allowed to talk to the media, period. End of story, unless the SAC gives you permission. So we all keep very tight-lipped. And so, wow, it was something to be able to actually be able to speak your mind. And I know initially I was always Marnie Hughes and Brian Inton, who I started off with, would always ask questions, and I'd kind of say yes, no. They'd say, can you expand on that? Because you're always very hesitant to talk about cases. But of course, in media, you can now because you don't have all the facts, but you can rely on your experience and facts known to give an opinion. And so now I just speak the unadulterated truth as I see it. I don't pull any punches. It's what I truly think and feel. There's nobody who can buy my opinion. And it's so liberating to be able to talk freely.
That's amazing. But you weren't able to do that in the FBI. And you mentioned the Red Shoe Award. I'd never heard about the Red Shoe Award. What's the process there? Like, how are you alerted by your, superiors, I guess? Like, who alerts you that you've done the wrong thing?
I have to say, it's something that was done internally amongst the troops, the knuckle draggers, the guys out there who are the field agents really running the cases. A lot of people don't understand that about the FBI. I know everybody thinks headquarters is in charge of everything, and they're really not. You have the case agent that's running the case. It's kind of like, imagine if you had 5 layers right now, you would still be running your podcast and your show and making the correct, discussion and questions and things. So the FBI really does not micromanage in that way. The supervisors trust who they call the case agents. The cases are assigned to agents, and then those agents have other agents assigned to them. And then they run the cases, and they really know what's going on. They have to obviously get approval for a lot of different things to do with money and consensual monitoring and, Title III authorities and all these other investigative tools. But the supervisors trust you, and then their ASACs trust them, their SACs trust them, and then the headquarters people trust the SACs. So really the people in power of the case, for the most part, are the case agents.
And could you tell us a little bit about your new podcast, Break the Case? Yeah,
Break the Case with Jennifer Coffindaffer. So I really shouldn't have chosen that name. I should have chosen FBI Jen. It's so funny because all my social circle, everybody calls me FBI Jen. They call me that because there's a lot of Jens, honestly, and a lot of the, I think it's the time we were born, right? There's a lot of people called Jennifer. So my moniker has been FBI Jen for years, or Cough. And so anyway, I didn't choose the best name for people to remember, but essentially the podcast really falls in line a lot with the Twitter space. On Twitter, it's such a small, really, you can only post a few paragraphs and then you lose people. I try to keep it fewer. Sometimes I get a little bit long winded on Twitter. But the podcast really allows for a couple of things: an opportunity, in my opinion, to interview people that we're going to lose their voice soon. These are a lot of retired FBI special agents. This really is what inspired me. I mean, there were 3 FBI agents that were mentors in my life that lost their lives recently. And I said, oh my gosh, I've got to get all of these other people who are still alive and breathing that have worked the most important cases in our country's history on to talk about not only those cases, but the cases we are looking at now. Let's get their perspective. So that's a big reason for doing the podcast.
That's amazing. How much contact do you maintain with your former colleagues? You must be always like in the know when it comes to certain real-time cases that are happening out there in the country and in the world. Do you get like inside information, and how do you like keep that internal, or how do you determine like what you talk about that you've gotten from a sort of an internal source?
That's a really good question. First of all, the network of retired FBI agents is really tight. And then amongst us, we have our certain tight group, right? So I have certain agents that I talk with weekly, monthly, a couple that I talk to more than once a week, right? That I'm just really close to, and you build those relationships. I always tease that the pallbearers for my funeral, and I really don't tease because my husband knows I've written it out exactly who they're going to be, and they're retired FBI agents. As far as the insider information, have a lot of friends still working, family still working, but there's a very unwritten rules, so to speak, when I was in and other agents had retired and were in particularly the private eye industry. Podcasting, all this is really fairly new. But those folks, not to get or even ask for information that you wouldn't otherwise be entitled to. However, obviously, whenever there's something that comes up that I find out on this end of things and I contact that case agent or that supervisor, sometimes they might say something. But I try to keep it very confidential. Anytime anybody tells me anything, a lot of the families I'm very close to, the victim families. And when they say, listen, we know this, you can't say it, I never say it. I would never betray any confidences like that. So anything you hear from me, I have permission to say.
Okay, I'd love to ask you about some of these crime stories that have been breaking over the past few weeks and months. And my first question is sort of related to the Twitter space, because with the wildfires going on in Los Angeles as we speak, there are a lot of people on social media talking about how there are arsonists starting these fires. And sometimes I can't tell if I've gone down like a political rabbit hole where it's just like a echo chamber of right versus left talking about, whether it's climate change or arsonists or whatnot, or if there really are arsonists, or what the situation is. But if there are really arsonists here, it seems like a very serious crime. What is your take on that? And how do you decipher like what's true about some of those posts?
Well, it's hard. I've learned my lessons a couple of times, where you trusted the account, a lot of these huge accounts with even 1 million followers in the true crime community, even them, you have to really vet. I know I got off on, and then even the media, even mainstream media. I received information from a mainstream media source once I posted it, had to take it right down because then I found out it was not accurate. So I try to really vet the information through about 2 to 3 vetting sources. If it's News Nation, I really trust News Nation. I trust them. I work with these individuals. I know them very well. People like Dan Abrams, Chris Cuomo, Ashley Banfield, all of them, Andrea Bankirk, Marky Martin, all these people have years investigating crimes from a reporting standpoint, and they have developed amazing sources. And there are great sources within law enforcement that talk to them knowing that they're going to be protected. And so, and I should say Nicole Burley, who is one of my most favorite stations to go on, and Elizabeth Vargas. I love going on all their shows. So I trust them. I trust what goes out on News Nation. And most of the other large, media outlets, for the most part, the AP typically really trust them. And so I really try to vet from that standpoint. But a lot of times I will find out information from insiders, meaning the actual people out there that are witnessing this. They reach out to me, victims and witnesses, and say, Jen, this is true. This is true. And then they'll send me something that I can vet, that I know it's true. So sometimes when I'll have something on that maybe is a first time, that's where I get it from. Something I'm really looking into now is this satellite footage. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's this satellite footage with 3 fires starting in the wild from satellite all at the same time in different areas. And that's really concerning to me, and I'm really trying to vet that right now. I've got 2 sources. I really want to get one more. I think it's very important to vet that, because if that's accurate, that I find that very unusual that you would have 3 sources of fire starting at different, or at the exact same time, but in different areas, but you can see it in one mapped area. Certainly now we know there are arsonists that are picking up the ball and, running with blowtorches and everything else. But again, they're not going to be charged unless they can prove that that was their intent. I understand they're running around with a blowtorch, but there's a lot more to prove in an arson matter than just somebody has a blowtorch in their hand.
I had not heard of this satellite footage of 3 separate spots where the fires started. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit more?
Well, essentially, it's satellite footage that has been received, and there's various ways, obviously, satellite footage is received, right? Different outlets have it. There's all sorts of different satellites up there and different footage that can be received. And I receive that, and I'm really trying to vet it before I put it out, because I don't want to put it out and then have it be debunked. But that has really caught my eye. It's something I've been working on for about a day. I've been super busy with a lot of other things, but I'm hoping to get on it today and really start sourcing that and getting down to the bottom of it, because it's very concerning. It shows, in the wild, right? It's not in downtown Los Angeles or in Malibu or anything like that in the Palisades. This is outside of those areas, but very close to, the approximate area. So I'm concerned about that. I mean, I also don't understand how the initial fire started, and obviously this happens a lot in Northern California and other areas. I just don't understand how no one could get a handle on it. We're learning more and more about funds that were depleted. We're learning about water supplies that weren't supplied. We're learning about a lot of issues in terms of the infrastructure to the fire department that was absolutely not up to par. 40,000 acres burned, 24 deaths. It's unbelievable what's happened, and I just can't believe that we're where we are today talking about it. And I featured it a lot, and a lot of people are teasing me, what happened to true crime? Well, this is a crime. It's crime to me that with everything going on with our technology, that we couldn't get the initial fire under control, I guess. And I keep asking the question, when's it going to stop? How do we stop it?
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Forensic genealogy, the process of identifying unknown offenders through their DNA by finding genetic relatives and building out family trees. It's taken the crime-solving world by storm. How does it work, and what are these cases all about? Find out on DNA ID, the only podcast that exclusively covers forensic genealogy. This season, you'll hear more than 20 solved cases, and of course, we'll continue with our coverage of doe identifications. Don't miss the season premiere of DNA ID on Monday, January 20th, wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. What are your feelings on the Luigi Mangione story and how that broke? And really, the public reaction online was just, I don't know. I've never seen anything like that, where people sort of supported what he did in killing Brian Thompson. What are your feelings on this?
You know, I don't have a popular opinion probably on Luigi Mangione. That case I've studied as close as probably any case. Of course, it's short-lived, so it's easy to just gobble up all the information, and really spent day and night on that case for many days and nights. And essentially, I believe this is an individual, as we know, from a family that is so wealthy, worth $100 million, right in that area, made their money, quite interestingly, through the healthcare industry, nursing homes. Yes, they have country clubs, and they have a lot more than that now. But I believe this is somebody who truly wanted, in a way, other than money, to distance themselves from their family. And we saw really a true break where he did that. And a lot of people want to attribute that to his pain and, back surgery. And as far as I can tell, listen, yes, he had a genetic situation where his vertebrae, he was born and they're a little off, and that's given him some problems throughout the years, but it was exacerbated when he lived in Hawaii and suffered from a surfing accident. And that left him in a lot of pain, serious pain. But in 2023, early 2023, he had surgery. He comes from money. He didn't want for anything. He didn't want for a surgeon. And after that, he posts on the Reddit account that I believe is his, saying it all went great, basically. It's so wonderful to be painless. So that's in 2023. And it's after that, really, that then he starts traveling again on, money likely from the family, right? He's got a lot of money. And he's able to go to Asia. He's able to, find himself, yoga, psychedelics, whatever. Or he talks about a lot of things, goes to Hawaii again. And then he completely loses contact with the family in about summer of 2024. His mother then puts out a missing persons. The last she knows, he's in San Francisco, obviously worried about him. Everybody was out of touch with him. So what he was doing, it seems he really took a turn. And, everybody can say a mental breakdown. They can say, all of these things. But the bottom line is he planned to do a cowardice act. And that was to not confront somebody, but to stalk somebody and shoot them in the back. And where I grew up, that's a cowardice act. I don't care who it's against. And quite frankly, he talks about it in his notes. I'm not going to at all call this a manifesto, because that's an insult to a real manifesto. This is a 200 plus page bunch of scribbling notes that just, like you and I would write, probably getting ready for a podcast. Okay, I need to ask this. I don't forget about this. What about this? Where he really talks about being fortuitous in his target, and fortuitous that, Brian Thompson was going to be there at that time. And then from there, he kind of takes it. And he does a brilliant job, I think, stalking. He does a brilliant job planning from the beginning of the attack through the murder up until his departure. But then he didn't seem to have any sort of mid-range plan. Am I really going to escape? What am I going to do? I think I'll just go to McDonald's and stay at various low-rent motels, with my $18,000 cash. I think he had something around that on him, keeping the gun, It's not really a ghost gun. They're Frankenstein guns, as we call them. The media has dubbed them ghost guns. I think they think that sounds cool. I think Frankenstein's gun sounds cool, right? You take different parts of different types of weaponry and you produce a gun. And the reason you do that, I think the reason he thought it would be wise to do this is it wouldn't be traceable. But the problem is it becomes so unique that it is so easily connected to this crime now. They did it in a day. They proved the ballistics because they've got tool mark evidence, meaning the extractor and ejector marks, as well as the firing pin mark, which has all lined up with his gun, which would be unique to probably any other gun because he constructed it himself. I see him as extremely, and I hate to use the word narcissistic because I am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I haven't examined him, even if I were. But let's just say narcissistic traits. And I say that, again, based on my experience of hunting down people just like him. They make all these mistakes not because they're so smart. They make these mistakes because they think they are smarter than they are. That nobody's going to figure it out. They're going to get away. And leaving that monopoly money is such a sign of in your face, I'm smarter than everybody, ha, ha, ha. And then writing the words on the bullets, defend, deny, and depose. Those were the three. Right. I want to make sure I didn't say what the book said. And depose, a lot of, my fellow pundits and experts and everything were saying, oh, see, he knows legally he's going to be deposed. And I always said, no. If you look at the true definition of depose, it means to quickly take from power. Violently take from power is to depose. And I still think, Luigi can tell me something else, but I thought, and I still think that that's exactly what Luigi said and what he did. I think he thought he wouldn't get away with it, but he does write that little note to the FBI, right? FBI, I really admire you all, and I don't want you to waste time looking at other people. This was all on me, which again, to me, is trying to say, look over here. I am really great, and I did this all on my own.
Yeah, wow. Great breakdown of all of that. And I've asked this question to a number of people that we've had on the show, whether in an interview or just on the side, but you're perfect to ask this question of how in the world is he going to get a fair trial? How is his legal team going to use all of the media that's been put on him to, I don't know, get the trial dismissed or something? Because one example real quick that I keep looking at is this 2020 special edition, the Manhunt, Luigi Mangione and the CEO murders, and it's got his face on it. And this is something that 2020 produced. It wasn't like they're reporting news. It's a produced documentary. I mean, this is something that's on Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, but how do they make that decision to make that documentary, and how is that going to be used to say he's not going to get a fair trial?
Well, it's so interesting, and I'll give you a couple examples. So we that are newsies, I call us newsies, right? We love the news. We eat it up. It's interesting and important to us to understand what's going around, about us. Secondarily, we like true crime. At least I like true crime. I think you guys like true crime, right? We like it. We want to understand it. It's fascinating to many people. But to millions and millions and millions, way more than our little group of newsies, and they don't care. They care about horse racing. They care about getting their kids ready for soccer. They care about who's going to win at Little League. They care about their job. They're worried about their personal relationships. And I can tell you right now, outside of your circle of podcasters and newsies, ask your buddies that you play softball with, or ask your buddies that, somebody you see on a plane. And I will guarantee you, maybe one has some idea of sort of something that might have happened. I found this with the Idaho case. Gabby Petito, I was just at a big tennis tournament, and somehow Gabby Petito came up. No one knew who Gabby Petito was. Somebody said, actually, probably 30 women. Someone said, did she die? Is she missing? So funny. But to us, we think, oh my gosh, Gabby Petito was worldwide news, just plastered everywhere. But that's why they'll be able to get a group of people, especially in New York. This is a gigantic venue, unlike Moscow, Idaho, with the Idaho 4 murder victims. That was a little bit different because that was such a small community. The Delphi case, such a teeny little Indiana town. But when you look at something, or even Canton with the Massachusetts case with Karen Reed, those are different scenarios, but not New York City. They will have no trouble finding people who have never heard of the case, even with the 2020 coming out. You got to like crime and news to watch 2020, and plenty of people don't.
Okay. Yeah, great. You've answered that question more thoroughly than anybody else. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, it was a great answer. And now you mentioned the Idaho 4 case and those four murders. What are your feelings on this story? And is it surprising to you that so many people seem to believe that Kohberger isn't the guy at all?
So out of all the cases I cover, especially now that Delphi has ended, this case is the closest, nearest, dearest to my heart, if you will. It's the case that I really hope and expect justice to be served in this case. Maddie, Xana, Ethan, and Kaylee, young adults, I call them kids. And I think part of the reason this case is so near to my heart and probably many people's heart is because they have either a sister, a brother, a son, a daughter that is exactly in that space and time when this happened. That's how I am. Kids the same exact age. And really, they're kids, right? They're still supported by their parents. They still call home every day to ask for advice. How do I open a credit card? How do I write a check? You know, how do I start a utility account? I mean, these are the questions that they had probably just asked getting that house in Idaho. You know, they're getting ready to graduate and start their lives. It's an infuriating situation because somebody who was so evil and, you know, had no self-worth decided to capture these kids and take a K-bar knife and literally, and I don't know how your show is rated, but just slice them to death. And I don't think people sometimes really think of the brutality of it. But for people like me who have seen that brutality, it makes you angry. It makes you angry down deep that anybody should have to experience dying that way. So what I have seen in that case, I feel like I'm in the twilight zone. Everything that happened right after those kids were murdered and all of the ridiculous conspiracy theories are starting all over again. It's actually, when I see one, I usually go on Twitter and I just say, just stop. Look at where we visited this before. Look at where law enforcement said they're not involved. Look at the evidence, which is a big goose egg. Kopaka is a big one that everybody wants to talk about. There's zero evidence, and yet they want to fabricate evidence to go off in a different way instead of looking at the evidence we have before us, which is great. I mean, great meaning great in volume and in what's important. You know, all you have to do is look at that very thorough probable cause affidavit, which goes way beyond probable cause, which is normally a page or two. They went out of their way. And there's going to be a lot more in that case. So I think that case just really frustrates me because of all the morons that will not just look at the evidence. I normally don't talk that way, call somebody a moron, but the things I see out there are moronic.
Do you think that there's something to be said with people getting addicted to conspiracy theories during COVID? Like, did you see an uptick after things started to settle down for COVID? Like, people were just getting too involved on their computer?
Well, I think what we saw certainly was such a huge uptick in crime because people had nothing else to do. They weren't in school. People also became much more involved in cases like the Chauvin cases that maybe normally politically wouldn't have sparked such infernos, but they were sitting there watching TV all day. So you had more, particularly youth, going out committing crimes, and you had more couch potatoes now watching crime and getting all worked up about various cases. As far as conspiracy theorists, I think you have a lot of conspiracy theorists. First of all, on social media, you have to really watch their account to figure them out. Like, I'll go and look at their account. Most of them a great deal were always conspiracy theorists. Some weren't conspiracy theorists, but they realize if they go in that direction, it builds their following. A perfect example is Luigi Mangione. If you take a viewpoint like I have, that it's straight out cowardice murder, is Brian Thompson. I've talked a lot about him, he was under investigation. He sold his stock in February. He was under investigation then, insider trading, I put it right out there for everybody to see. But that doesn't take away from this crime that was committed. Brian Thompson's never been convicted, never even been charged with a crime. And yet everybody's so quick to convict him without ever having his day in court and not look at the strong connection to a murderer. So I find that people want to build so you can kind of watch those people and you can easily identify them, where they will take on a particular narrative to sort of build. So they follow whatever will build a narrative. So I don't know an uptick after COVID. I think it's a matter of following the account and looking at their agenda.
Good answer. And I wonder too if like what the monetization of X, where that fits in, because it seems to me, creators or people on Twitter are incentivized, some people anyway, are incentivized to sort of spread outlandish ideas, because whether you agree or disagree as someone else viewing on X, you might click on it and it gets your attention and some interaction, and I guess that gets them paid.
Unless you have millions of followers, you're not getting paid much money at all. You're just not. People with millions of followers, they're making some money. And even that amount of money, I believe, would not be much. In other words, a few thousand. I don't think they're making much money. But I think it's way bigger, or not bigger. I think it's way more internalized than that. I think it's people that want to have a voice and they want to be heard, and they maybe have no other life. They call them trolls, right? Some people are true trolls. In fact, I had a gal that worked for me for a while, and she came to me and she said, "You know what? I was a Twitter troll for years, and I want to get on the right side of this." She said, I truly am having like some feeling of just guilt right now. And so I'm even coming to you, telling you I'm a troll and what I did, which was really horrible. But that's what entertained her. It wasn't about money. It was about truly trying to take down accounts, it's sort of like cyber warfare in a trolling space. And I'm not going to call them professional trolls because they're not paid, but they do it for themselves. And you can imagine being in part of a trolling environment, and some of them have Discord groups, and those Discord groups work in harmony with one another. I've had many people that are in Discord groups come to me and say, "By the way, I'm in a Discord group, and this is what this group is doing." It's amazing what goes on behind the scenes of Twitter. And so it's really more about that, not about getting money, but about feeling relevant, and about, I've got this great, I have these really artistic, fun people send me stuff, and one of them sent me this cute little cartoon, and it's like a guy who's got hairy arms, and he's got Twix in one hand or whatever, candy bar, and he's just, he's just a keyboard warrior right on there doing that. Those are real people. I mean, that really happens. And instead of watching Days of Our Lives and whatever those other soap operas were, they are involved in real life crime and real life drama that they're manipulating in some ways. That's a very powerful feeling.
We've been doing the true crime thing for a while, and we dealt with all sorts of different, I guess, categories of trolls. And it is interesting that you give that perspective of these people are doing it as a way to be relevant. And it makes me wonder, and I don't know, do you wonder, like, what is it about their lives that they need this feeling of being relevant? I'm just thinking about a personal example of people who had been trolling us and aggressively, I guess, commenting in emails, and it's harmless, but they have families. They have a wife and kids, and there was even one that we called a wellness check on because we weren't sure what he was going to do, because it got like that extreme. So what's your feelings on that? Like, what is missing from their existence that make them want to be felt as super relevant?
Well, I think in some of them, I equate it back to growing up, right? All of us grew up around a bully. And bullies are very interesting, right? Because they're the most insecure. They really don't have any friends. And the only way to get friends are sort of to bully the people that are able to be bullied. So you have those types that it's just probably the way they've been their whole lives. And it gives them a sense of importance and in a sense of power. So I think you have that going on. I think you have some people that are truly, and I can say this, I think everybody's different, but I've never, ever experienced or understood jealousy or envy. For whatever reason, God just didn't make me this way. And so it's always been very hard for me to understand whenever people feel like that, because it's something I don't have experience with. But I do truly believe that for some people, that's their motivation. Maybe they want to be a podcaster. Maybe they look at you guys, they say, look at this, two handsome guys, they're successful. Look at everything they're doing. They're relevant. And I am so jealous, and I'm going to tear them down just strictly from jealousy and envy. So I think there are a lot of people that operate from that vantage. And I know that because of all the crimes I've investigated. Some people kill, murder, steal, break into their homes, threaten, all because of jealousy. No other reason than when you interview them, and that's their motive, because they have so much and I have so little. So you have that phenomena. But I really think some people have an emptiness with their time. And they really, really don't have anything else going on in their lives. They drop off their kids, or they're not working for some reason. They're on disability. And what else are they going to do with their time if they're not involved in other activities? In other words, they don't golf, they don't play tennis, they don't play pickleball, they aren't involved with their kids' school, whatever it might be. Now you're at home and you have this super highway called social media. And it's intriguing. I enjoy Twitter so much. I'm an insomniac, so I'm up way too much. And when nothing else is going on, I absolutely, whenever I'm watching, I'm a sports addict, fanatic. And whenever I'm watching sports, I'm usually tweeting at the same time, doing commercials and, when a play's not happening. I love the engagement. I've talked bad, I guess, about Twitter, but I don't mean to do that, because so many of the people are so intelligent. There's doctors, there's lawyers, there's stay-at-home moms with amazing education. They're wise people. who, one of the wisest guys that I interact with, I think he drives a garbage truck. And he's so worldly and wise and has been through a lot. And I just love his takes. So I love Twitter because of that. It's like a little community. And that's how I feel. I love the group.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. Now, you had mentioned Karen Reed, and we're in Massachusetts as we speak. So this is a story that has really gripped the people of Massachusetts as well as the people of Twitter and really all over the country. What are your thoughts on this case?
Well, I've said it before, and I really feel terrible you're going to ask me about this because I don't want, unfortunately, you're going to be trolled and people are going to come on. There's several other shows that I've been on, and when they asked that question, I actually had one of them reach back out to me. He's got a very nice sized platform. He said, "Man, I should have never even gone there." He said, "My life has been miserable since. They just have inundated my feed. They've inundated my YouTube channel. They're, and I said, I'm so sorry. That's a whole different animal. And I think that's an animal that the courts are really going to have to deal with. They're trying to deal with it with some of the individuals who have been hired and paid and profited from that case to stir up controversy and to really spin lies. I don't know how else to say that. It's a case that, as an investigator, it's so funny how I even looked at that case. That is a case I never probably ever would have even visited. But I got DM'd by two accounts. One that I was really active with, and then one that I was fairly active with, very engaged day in and day out in my Twitter space. And separately, they don't know each other. They both reach out and they said, "What'd you think about the Karen Reed case?" And I said, "What's the Karen Reed case?" And then they sent me a news article or something, each of them separate, whatever. So one day I had some time. I said, "Oh yeah, I'll look into this," which I often do whenever somebody reaches out to me and it's important enough for them to DM me and I have time. I looked at it and I said, "All right, let me start where I always start. I'll go into the court records." So I get a hold of the court documents, the defense motions. There was so much. And the CW's, portrait, the Commonwealth, they call them the Commonwealth there, the prosecutors, right? I look at both and I'm like, wow, this is sort of a no-brainer. This woman hit John O'Keefe. They got into a fight. Their relationship, not marriage. They were not married. The relationship was on the rocks. And she was drunk, and it was a terrible blizzard, and she just got angry. And I think she just saw him in her rear view, and she was so angry that he was going to go to this party without her, that she slams it in reverse, and I don't think she was thinking, "Oh, I'm going to kill him." I think she was like, "I'm going to show him and clip him, right? I'm going to just scare him or. And instead, she hits him, and he's there lying in the snow. And I really think that she thought of him, like a lot of people thought of John O'Keefe, as sort of a guy that, strong, tough, kind of invincible. I mean, that, if you read about him, that's pretty much his persona and how he was thought of. And I think she thought of him that way. But then when she didn't hear from him, when she's calling and she thinks he's cheating, and, she thinks, and then she starts thinking, she even says on the news, on, I think it was the Dateline, where she said, "I saw him and he didn't look dead." Words to that effect. You'll have to go back to that interview. She said, I thought I clipped him, but I looked back, he wasn't dead, I didn't think. Again, I'm paraphrasing. So she knew. And then, she drove off. And how has this whole thing got out of control? Out of control because you had money to be made from this case in spades, because you have a group of people that are so angry with the government there, that believe these little towns are just wrought with public corruption, and they may be. And it reminds me so much of Rodney King. You know, you had this group that was just incensed by police beating him so severely and then getting off, that when OJ goes to trial, and I have the footage of the later interview where they said, yeah, he was guilty, but we're going to let him go because of Rodney King. Absolute, what they call jury nullification, has nothing to do with the facts. It has to do with nullifying a crime because of your anger toward an institution or a situation. And that's what I see happened here. And then they just strung together, a string of lies for conspiracy theorists and people who have nothing else to do in their lives but dress in pink and think it's a carnival and insult the parents. It's a shame, and it's a travesty. And that case is honestly makes me sick every time I even hear her name.
And just having that sort of be in our backyard, it's a question that we get from time to time from people, because they're like, oh, you must know a lot about this. But the more you start looking into it, it is, like you said, a travesty. It is a shame that is happening in the state, and it is really gross. Like, it's a really embarrassing thing to have happen in, a state that we would like to represent. Super interesting comment, though, about the OJ trial and the strategy there. Where were you at professionally when that was all going down?
I'll never forget it. I was in the Houston office. I was an FBI agent. I was working organized crime. I was in Mrs. Lee's coffee shop, where every other FBI agent goes to grab, whatever, a soda or a drink or a snack or have lunch. So we were all there, bunch of FBI agents. That's where we hung out. And when it was announced on her television, she had a television that would sit up in the corner. It was jaw-dropping. It was jaw-dropping, the whole situation, because being in law enforcement, you just you just hung your head and shook your head, because you knew that there was never going to be any sort of justice for the Brown family and any sort of justice for the Goldman family. And at the end of the day, any FBI agent that I've known, that's what drives them. It's certainly not the money. You come in, you're not making much money. Actually, when I first became a special agent, and it was with the Office of Inspector General, I was with them for about 2 years before I became an FBI agent. My paycheck, and I found one of those stubs not long ago, I think I made $400 a week. And I probably worked about 80 hours a week. You're in it because you really care, and you really want to make cases. You want to see justice. And I'm serious. That's why agents work day and night. So anyway, I was sickened. And so were all my colleagues. And I'm still sickened, and I'll always be sickened. And, to watch that video, and I posted on my Twitter, I probably posted it 10 times, only once as a true tweet. But then other times when I respond about that case or other things, when I talk about jury nullification, I said, listen to this juror. That's jury nullification. That's wrong. And I hope it doesn't happen. I think it happened in the Karen Reed trial. I think that's why it was hung.
Wow. Yeah. Great answer there. Very, very interesting. Well, Jennifer, it's been great speaking with you here today and getting to know you a little bit and asking you about these cases. You're a wealth of knowledge, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I can't wait to see the comments from your audience and interact with them. I always find that these audience members, I always say this, you'll never see an FBI agent on a jury. a lawyer on a jury, who are you going to see? Everyone else. The people that follow these things, they're entrusted to be able to learn the law, to understand the law, and to apply the law and the facts of a case. And that's the people here. So that's why I think audiences are so important, and I value opinions, and I know you all do too. So thank you for having me. It was an honor, and you all have been great.